it's a pleasure for me to introduce my dear friend and mentor, Dan Jones.
Let me say what my purpose today is to try and enlist you in a campaign. We are about to see a much, much bigger wave than we've seen so far of the digital hype. On the other hand, there's another wave coming. And my mission is to think through how we rephrase, how we go back to basics, and how we capture the essential qualities and essences of Lean as we engage in this new debate. This became clear to me when I visited the oldest hospital in the world in Florence, just 2 blocks from the Dome in Florence. And it struck me there that what we're trying to do is trying to use the same scientific approach to diagnosing and treating organizational problems as doctors are using to diagnose and treat medical problems. The implications of this are actually profound because what it is about, it's about personal mastery. It's all about people. And it's all about the journey to mastery of those people. Now, of course, personal mastery is a process involving lots and lots of practice. And you go from the step where initial awareness, which is the first step of what is this all about, and where does it might lead, and what are the tools, and how do they fit together, and so on. That, of course, is just the first step. The second step is then, okay, you actually don't learn until you do this, but you have to learn with a sensei or a supervisor or somebody who is going to coach you in the initial practice of using these tools to solve problems. And then the third step, of course, after a lot of practice, is that you can do this without supervision. And the fourth and ultimate step is that you can teach others how to do this. Lean is fundamentally about learning everybody, learning to practice often counterintuitive behaviors, to learn to act our way into a different way of thinking and behaving. And Lean also is an inspiration because we know in there somehow, if we can only unlock it, there is this people-built system, this system built on people rather than system based upon experts designing something for Taylorist managers to manage and fit people in. Is that the point of what we're doing is actually creating value for customers. We're creating products and services that allow customers, users, to create value in their lives. And that's a dialogue. Now, big data, great. It gives us an additional set of tools and techniques for creating real-time, at least frequent, feedback from customers. And should also be matched on our part by thinking, how are we every day improving elements of our products or services to meet the information we get about things that don't work. But through a dialogue with real customers, you can actually create real value, win-win value, in terms of feedback on the product and service and education of customers. Now, I put this brochure from a very interesting internet company, IT company in Sweden that I was in recently. And what I liked about it was that it says our dealings, our lives are increasingly complex. And our duty, this is their vision statement, our duty as an IT company is to simplify things. Now, simplifying designs is actually the ultimate success of stripping away unnecessary activities. Rather than trying to sell additional complexity, actually selling and designing exactly what people need is a real art that goes beyond simply trying to flood the market with products that can do anything and are over-engineered. So it's people and it's product. It started at the top with decide what's important and ended with understand what the customer wants. Now, I would start by understanding what the customer wants. And then it's about building the personal mastery of the people in the process. And that's a picture of a team at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston drawing up a plan for a patient's stay. And it's very, very interesting once you get a team like that together with different skills, different perspectives, who is best able to contribute to developing the plan for the patient. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a value stream, is the sum of the capabilities of the people managing the value stream. And if we forget that, if we just design the maps, we're missing a huge part of Lean. The flip side of that, of course, is that the work of management is to enable the people in the line to do the work to create the value. So we're designing a management system to enable value to be created rather than designing a management system to allocate resources and to control budgets. We're working up from the Gemba. What is the management necessary to coordinate, to communicate, to mentor, to coach the capabilities of the value stream? And as we move into the digital age, two things are happening. One is a lot of what used to be external support activities, particularly in IT, is actually being incorporated into both the equipment, but also the design of the product itself. And so IT as a separate function actually is becoming more and more embedded into the day-to-day work of engineers and line staff. And I think that's true with many of the other functions. So the old idea of the functionally vertical organization in which the power rests with the functions is increasingly anachronistic, and increasingly we're going to integrate many of those support activities into the line itself. But the other thing is happening is Google is changing the role of experts. It's not replacing experts, but expertise is now available on pretty well every subject and growing. And it's changing the lives of doctors quite fundamentally. You can go and get access to all of the material that was previously preserved for the doctor online. And so what expert help do you need in that situation? You have access to the information. What you don't need is the expert, what you need is experience, somebody with experience at interpreting that information and helping you to assess its relevance and so on. So expertise gets replaced by experience. And that's the value and the role of a sensei or of a manager who has grown up in a problem-solving culture. The other side of this piece, which is actually very important, is the learning to work together, the learning to connect the activities together. The other important thing is that as we gradually stabilize processes and master the variation in the processes and in how to tackle the variation in processes, then we're tempted to automate those processes. And at some point that may be valid, actually going from a set of rules of thumb, as Michael would call it, rules of thumb to an algorithm. That's a step that should happen last. So actually, a lean approach to automation is to master the process first. And the last step then, when you have complete stability, is then you may automate it. It's completely the opposite to the attempt by the digital world of getting rid of processes and simply automating everything. And you know what happens. You automate a broken process, you create even more chaos. History of SAP. I was in this IT company in Stockholm, where I was holding a workshop, really interesting IT company, multi-site operation, really quite big, do a lot of software development and system work right across Scandinavia and into Russia. And they took me to a room about this size, not quite as big as this, that they used to run the whole business, to plan all of the projects, deploy the resources, review process, review employment projects. And this is an IT company, and there wasn't a single screen in the room. It was an Obeya process. And I, of course, immediately provoked them by saying, well, why didn't you automate? Why haven't you got this automated? Because every hospital you go into, the doctors just want an automated screen rather than a visual management board. And he said, some decisions are too important to automate. The last story is a really interesting story from Saskatchewan, where I was this autumn, where they have a province-wide lean program, a very big lean program with some bunch of ex-Shingijutsu consultants helping them. And they've done a lot of work improving hospitals and so on. But one of the early things they did was actually to design the next generation hospital. They had to replace several hospitals, so they decided to use 3P. They invited a bunch of customers, patients, and providers from the hospital, doctors, nurses, and clinicians and physicians and so on, into a warehouse, maps the flow, walked the flow around the hospitals, mapped the ideal flows of information, flows of product, flows of patients, etc., and came up with, in a structured way, an optimal design for those flows. And then took a series of rooms, of types of rooms that you need, and do full-scale mock-ups of those rooms. They did this 3 times, and they got very, very similar answers based upon the needs of users and the needs of the people actually providing the service. And only then, the architects and the designers were standing listening to this, but were not allowed to take part. Once the design was clear, once the needs of the users was clear, then it was given to the designers to design a building, and designing a building that is much smaller in footprint and has a very significantly less running costs over the life of the building. So if you want to read about the coming lean digital age, these are 3 books that you could start. There's the New Digital Age, which is the Google book, which is very interesting, almost unreadable, in that it is just a relentless, absolutely relentless assertion that everything is going to change tomorrow because of connectivity. You should read it. It's very, very interesting. The second machine age predicts that middle-class jobs and white-collar jobs are going to be disappeared by the digital age. But it has its image. There are 2 images here. In the Digital Age book, the image is that startups are going to completely obliterate existing businesses. It's just a matter of finding the right startups, and the startups are going to just completely get rid of existing businesses. The second image is that this is going to be top-down. This is going to be another form of enabling top-down command and control to reassert the traditional Taylorist paradigm. So the third book, so I think Lean has a very important role in articulating and helping develop the social organizational forms for unleashing the opportunities of the digital age. And the big data, I thought was the most hype book of these 3, but in fact is the most interesting. Because in fact it is opening up an additional set of tools to PDCA. PDCA is about traditional hypothesis-driven experiment verification processes. Big data, examining complete portfolios of data in real time, allows you to spot what's happening long before you actually can understand why things are happening. And it brings together a lot of information that was previously we didn't have. So there's a whole bunch of new sets of tools that will give us additional insights into what's going on, and what the impact of our actions is going to be very, very quickly. So I would urge you to read that big data book. If you don't read any of them, just read that one. That's the most important one, because there really are some messages there for methodology that we need to add to our knowledge of PDCA.